My man Jason, how are you, dude?
I'm doing good. Had a good time yesterday with the last Render Challenge judging. It was
It
really fun.
it was a beautiful competition, right?
Yes, it was really great.
So I'm really not sure who's going to be watching this live because we were sort of like busy working on doing other things, and we still had it in the schedule that we had to go live. We got a little bit delayed, and so for that I apologize on our end, guys. But today I'm very excited about this challenge because I guess that as a challenge, we're going to be given the possibility today to contribute, hopefully, to a good cause. Um, we had some ideas for this week's challenge, but we thought to change it a little bit last minute because we really wanted to do what we are about to announce. Now, the very big thing that you guys need to know approaching this challenge is that this is not a 1 week challenge, it's a 2 weeks challenge. Specifically because there are not assets given on our end, you probably have to do everything on your own. And I know that this sounds really, really bad, but maybe it will give you a chance for you guys to do something creative and to do something a little bit different. Now, in light of the recent events, what is happening in America, we we decided to give our platform to artists that wanted to show the support to our friends overseas in creating artworks that allow you guys as artists to express your feelings. And over the past um, 3, 4, 5 days, I've been looking at the artwork done by um, quite a few different people, and it was very touching. And I know that this could be a chance to really put our work and our creativity to use. And this is because I feel like artists are very talented and very gifted, and they have the ability through their work to inspire people to take action and to inspire people to think differently about a problem and about finding a solution. So let me just show you some of the work that I've found online. This is, of course, our friend Mike Winkelmann Beeple. He's been very active now trying to raise awareness on the latest events. And then there was this artwork, which I really liked, from Stefan Mattes, which, it really hit home with me because everything that I've been seeing online, on videos, um, it really, I don't know, it's very difficult for me to put it into words. As a kid growing up, we always looked at America as the land of the just, as the land of the free, as the land of dreams. And so growing up and seeing this stuff happening, it's a little bit like my entire childhood crushing down, if that makes any sense. Does it to you, Jason? And so,
Yeah, I know what you mean. I do. I
like
know what you mean.
in my case, I have my brother. He lives in San Diego, and he's married from a woman from Honduras. She is a woman of color. Uh, Knowing that my family it's not safe in the United States because of whatever it is that it's happening, um, it is for me a very personal matter. And so being in quarantine and not being able to go and see my brother over there, I really do feel like I'm powerless. And of course, not to mention all my friends and the people that I care about that live over there, um, not having the possibility to go there and show them support or go and see them just to feel closer to them. I kept thinking over the past 2 days, what is it that I can do myself having this platform? what is it that I can do to give a voice to other artists that also feel that kind of frustration. Now, let me just be 100% clear with you guys. This is not a political post. I don't care if you are from the right, if you're from the left, if you support that politician or the other politician. At the end of the day, violence is never the answer, and violence is never the right thing. Obviously, what is happening, I think it's unavoidable because of the fact that, the string was pulled to the point where it just had to snap. And so, I don't know, I just hope that by doing this, we're going to be able to express our feelings and to manifest those feelings so that people might think about what is happening, and our friends over there in the United States will feel that we're trying to be close to them through this struggle. But anyway, Jason, you and I have had this conversation many times over the years. I was always asking you about what was it like to grow up in the United States, and I always told you that, for me it was sort of like a dream to one day live there. You instead moved from the United States.
Though.
Come again?
I hear this often, though, from Europeans, and also, I think I also kind of felt that maybe at the beginning when I first started living here. But you don't feel that anymore since a few years. That is definitely a political thing. I'm not saying, I'm not, putting my foot down anywhere. I'm just saying that is definitely a political issue. Growing up in the South, if I think about it when I was a kid, I don't really, it was a positive thing. I don't feel like it was strange in the sense that I felt like something was wrong. But as I got older, I started to realize either the things that I had seen that as a kid, or the way that kind of the system was working, was certainly not working in a fair way generally. But those things I didn't notice as a kid, and of course I have to also stress that I cannot understand and would never be in a position to understand what it would be like for minorities in that situation. To grow up in that situation is what I mean.
The thing is that, I was talking about what is happening, the hate crimes and the way the police is acting towards minorities, especially, people of color. When I was listening to Will Smith talking about racism in America, and he said something that really made me incredibly sad. He said that racism is not getting worse, it's getting filmed. And by saying this, he said that, that kind of problem in the United States always existed. And, for me as a kid growing up and watching like sitcoms where, you had like people of colors in them and seeing them living in harmony, with one another, seeing this stuff over the internet, it really does come to me as a, I don't want to say a disappointment because I don't want to go around and say, oh, I'm disappointed, but it really comes down to me feeling like extremely sad and extremely depressed about the state of humanity over there, Like seeing people rioting in the streets, it really breaks my heart. And I don't know, it's, you and I have already talked about this. It's so difficult to put into words. That feeling of not being able to help, of not being of use.
Well, I mean, let's be honest. It's a reaction. This is not what's happening now. Is not a reaction to one event. This is a reaction to events that have built up over years and years, And it's also not just about the police brutality. If you have, in my opinion, I think a lot of it has to do with this just as much to do with the income inequality, the growing gap between wealthy and poor. It's just generally how people are treated, in today's society in America. Because honestly, this is also something I realized as I got older, that the reality is that America was always like this. I mean, I hate to say it, and I'm sure I'm going to get some hate for that, but America has always been like it is now. Perhaps it wasn't as visible because we didn't have social media. Like you're saying, it was being filmed now. It's for sure wasn't as visible. But I think a lot of these things are kind of exposing those problems that always existed. I mean, people always like, well, what's going on? How could this happen? It's not happening like new or anything. This is like how it's always been there. And I believe that in a way, it just goes to show you that this idea of like this just and pure America or whatever is really like was a myth, right? That was created. I mean, if you can still see it today, how people talk about, especially this very pro-America people, how they talk about America, that it's the greatest country in the world and so on. I mean, that's fine if you really believe that it really is, but what are you basing that on? I'm not sure, I mean, it's like,
let me ask you.
Such a complicated topic.
Let me ask you, from a professional point of view, you working in the here in Europe, in Austria, and you working in the United States, do you feel like you had more opportunities and more possibilities in America than in Europe? Because, generally speaking, this is the idea. Do you think that your life quality would have been the same if you stayed in America than if you stayed in Europe?
No, not at all. It wouldn't. The quality of life is completely different. And the interesting thing about that is that in America, a lot of times quality of life is based on how much money do I make and how successful am I, right? Like that's the ideal. In Europe, that's not what quality of life means. Quality of life means, being able to not work yourself to death, having enough money to do the things that you want to do, and to be sort of live a more relaxed lifestyle. And I think that in terms of your well-being, I've been much better off in Europe than in the U.S. The United States is very stressful. It's a very stressful place to live. From just my own experience, even as a kid when I was starting to drive, and I come from northern Arkansas. There are only white people there. There's no there's a lot of racism there, but there's no outlet to put it out as. So for the racist people, they basically are hermits. They're like racist hermits. Let's put it that way. But even as a kid, whenever I would get pulled over, or as a teenager, by police, I was scared. I wasn't scared I would get killed, but it was scary because the police are a little bit scary in America. They really are. If you've done something wrong, but the problem is that they can determine whether they think you did something wrong or not, and that's where the fear comes from, I think. But speaking of that, that's a big driver in the United States. Fear, you can be controlled by fear a lot.
Jason, you know me. I'm a person that loves to joke around, and I say more stupid things than things that make sense most of the time. But let me tell you two separate episodes. One was in Austria, and another one was in America. So one time I was running in Austria, and there were policemen hiding in the bushes with a radar gun to find people that were speeding in a street in like in the fields, right? And so I'm running. Yeah. I look at them and I scream, "Am I going too fast?" And they point the gun at me and they say, "No, you're good." And so this is to make you understand, like how people are in Austria, like policemen. And this is just one of the few episodes. it has happened many times that, I got stopped and, like, we had a laugh and they let us go. And then there was a time that I was in New York, in downtown, and there was this policeman that was helping a guy carrying the chain of a bicycle, because obviously the guy must have lost the key, right? And then I'm like, I look at them and
Yeah.
I really wanted to give them a hand, and so I was like, hey guys, what is happening? Should I call the police? And the police guy, man, he stood up and looked at me like I was so fucking scared. I honestly, like, I I was living in Brownstone in Brooklyn, in the ghetto, and I did not feel that scared as the way that policeman looked at me when I said that thing to him. And it's like, I it must be fucking terrifying to find yourself at the moment, during those protests, trying, even if you want to walk peacefully in the street and show that you're opposing what the government is doing to you. And, like, I've read online people saying, yeah, but, people are being violent and that's the response to violence. I call bullshit on that. I've seen interviews with journalists saying the police was shooting at journalists rubber bullets
Yeah.
in the face just to get the cameras off the protests. I don't know. You were telling me about,
I've
people.
seen. Yeah, I think actually this is the thing that gets me. I think that these days it's impossible anyway to always know what is really happening, because you can spin things a lot of different ways. But the reality is, we've seen, because these people were actually filming, and we're talking about, press, that the press is being attacked here as well. And
Yeah.
that's strange. Like, that's crossing the line for sure. So a lot of these things, though, there's other things happening where I've seen where they're trying to find out who to blame for the violence, right? The right wing is blaming the Antifa, anti-fascists. The left wing is blaming white supremacists that they're acting like anti-fascists so that they can be blamed, etc. The reality is, it's probably all happening. I mean, like, it's hard to say that it's one or the other. It's probably all happening. But that's also a scary part about all of this, is that we don't really know what's going on. And unless you're actually standing there, you won't know. And it just gets back to my point as well about I in no way can ever say that I understand what it would be like, or what would have been like to grow up as a minority in America. And I have great feeling towards wanting to be supportive about these things. But I don't want to cross a line and say that I can understand it.
Yeah.
I can't understand it. But I'm certainly on the side of the oppressed in this situation, and not on the side of the oppressors. And if you ask me, it looks a little bit like a revolution is what we're seeing. I mean, I hope it doesn't come to that. You already have the National Guard on the street in many cities.
This is really, like, to me, a red flag. Like, I think that
they're also overreacting.
I think that things are, like, to a certain extent, I hope that they are going to escalate to the point where change will have to happen. On the other end, I don't know if America is ready to accept a government made from the people for the people, because, like, I've always had this feeling in the past few years that America has basically rejected their government. Like, that, the government is just politicians doing their politician stuff, and they have nothing to do with the people, and that everybody is a man on their own or a woman on their own, and they have to survive on their own. There is this aspect of singularity that it's so heavy on all Americans.
Yeah, I would say since Clinton was president, the like divisions between conservative and liberal sides have just grown to be extremely strong and extremely different, in the sense that those sides are no longer willing to work with each other.
Mm.
And those sides are also no longer willing to even talk, because they both feel like talking hasn't done anything and nothing's going to change. And I guess there's a feeling of hopelessness for most people. And I'm talking about conservatives as well. I'm not talking about just liberal people. I've talked to a lot of people back home who they don't like Trump either, and they aren't sure, but they aren't sure like what's the option, for
Yeah.
them, because they still don't see someone who they feel like is going to represent their values. And Trump doesn't represent their values either necessarily. They probably voted for him, but I think that's something we also should always remember, that someone who voted for Trump back then, they also didn't know how this was going to turn out. It's not like, and I will say one political thing, and I don't mind saying it, and I think anybody who's followed me knows that this is how I feel. I do not like Trump. He's put the United States in a position that it's never been in, I don't think, and he also is not leading at all, ever. He's not leading, right? Because right now in this situation is the time when someone steps up who is a leader and says, okay, let's figure out what to do here. We have to come up with a way to solve this problem. And instead, what does he do? He first hides in the bunker, and then because people found out he hid in the bunker, he comes out the next morning, clears out the protesters with tear gas and everything else, so he can walk down and stand in front of a church and hold a Bible up. Now, if you can't see that is propaganda, I don't know what I can say to you. And I find this one of the scariest parts to me, is that it's extremely obvious to me. It feels very obvious to me what is happening and what's going on, but there are still some people who don't want to see it. That's fine. That's their prerogative. But I'm not going to stand by and be like, oh, I'm just going to watch it and see what happens. You can't do that. Fabio, I wanted to ask you actually, what would you like to see out of this competition for people? What kind of ideas do you expect to see?
Well, I would hopefully see that, in a way, despite the political differences that people might have, in their preferences, that eventually everybody stands for the same thing, meaning a world without racial separation, a world without violence, a world where if people make mistakes, they have the chance, to redeem themselves. And this is another thing that, to me was very dear. Like when the corona pandemic happened, I've read of so many stories of like entrepreneurs in America that lost everything. And of course, I understand, if you're on your own, we are on our own with the D2. We basically lost a whole year of business because of the pandemic. Still, the government comes and helps you. They're trying to accommodate you. They're trying to give you tax breaks. They're trying to figure out together what it is that you can do so that you don't go under. In America, to me, it feels always like so sudden that you can have it all and you can have nothing from a day to another. And so, like, I wish that despite the political affiliation that you might have, I wish to see that people come together in these basic human values that, that keep us together and that string us together and that show that we are, as a matter of fact, one single species. And maybe I'm naive to think that. Maybe I don't know. But, ideally...
I think it's very...
But that's what we
it's
do
very
as
optimistic.
artists, right? That's what we do as artists. We picture an idealistic idea of whatever it is that we have in mind.
Yes, I agree with you. I mean, I think that ideals are important, and I have my own ideals about how I feel like things should be. I think uh, it's unrealistic to believe that things can be like that, because people have differing views on things. But what is missing today that wasn't missing, let's say, 25 years ago or 30 years ago, is that these days no one's willing to compromise anymore.
Yeah,
There's no compromise.
yeah,
And
you're right.
when there's no compromise, you get what's happening now. So it doesn't happen immediately. It happens over time. The pressure builds up. No one's willing to compromise. Things have to be either this way or that way, and that's
Yeah.
it. My way or the highway, right?
It's a
That's how it
very
is.
black or white world, so to say. Like there is.
And it's gotten much worse over the last few years. And I'm not talking about, it's gotten a lot worse since, I would say it's since Clinton was president. Even when Clinton was president, there was a lot of animosity between the sides. But since Clinton was quite a conservative president, even though he was a Democrat, it was a lot different, I think, that time. But ever since then, I mean, since George Bush was president and then so on through the line, I believe it's just gotten worse and worse consistently. I mean, the funny thing is, if you think back about like when Bush was president, that was kind of a nice time, wasn't it? Kind of
Well,
crazy, actually. No, I mean, relatively speaking.
I read somewhere that the tendency of people to look at the past in a more positive way is due mainly to the fact
Yes.
that you were younger, and so you had a
Yeah.
more positive. Like for instance, I can tell you one thing. Like growing up in my teen years and then in the early 20s, I was very much um, a guy. Oh, the puppy makes
Yeah.
everything
Sorry,
better.
I had to.
Hey, Charlie.
He came to me. Oh, he's really biting. Sorry, I'm sorry.
I was very
Thought he wanted to
much
come up here.
leaning more towards the right than to the left, politically speaking. And that's because as a person, I was educated that you had to work. It was your obligation that you had to work, and so I had like my dad waking me up at 5 in the morning so that I could get 2 hours of training in the morning, go to school, get out of school, go and work in a shop. The money that I was making for that shop, I would pay for my professional training. My trainer was costing a lot of money. And so, I had this life that was revolving around the idea of that you are responsible for your performance, right? And then when I started to grow up and my knees started not to respond and my back started to hurt, I realized that that kind of pace could not be kept for as long as I thought I would, right? And so you start to look at things in a different way. Now, with that said, I could have stayed more on the right side, but what life does to you, it mitigates all the cases, right? And you start to look at everything not more in a black and white way, but more in a blurring, overlapping sort of way. And so,
Yeah.
I'm guessing that what I'm trying to say is that people should probably try actively to be a little bit more empathetic and see the other side as well. Ray Dalio says you should always listen to the other side, but you need to make sure that the other side, they're intelligent and they're not stupid. Then that begs the question for like, how do you decide if the other side is stupid or it's
I think
intelligent?
but I do think it is a matter of how people will argue about things. I mean, there's different ways to argue about things and to say what you believe is the right way to do something. Uh, the problem is it's devolved into like name calling, right?
Yeah,
And for me, I know a lot of people who they just cannot stand like to hear somebody else's views, and I'm talking about left-leaning people. I'm not talking about right-leaning people too, but I'm talking about left-leaning people. They cannot stand to hear people's views from the other side. Now the problem is, of course, people are harsh online on social media, but I personally, I will not block someone on social media, for instance. I will not unfriend people. And the reason is that I like to know what people think and I want to hear what people think. I mean, I'm not going to agree with them, but I do want to know what they're thinking and what they're, you are missing an entire side of like
Yeah,
humanity
yeah, you're right.
if you are not listening to how other people feel. And if you don't know how they feel, then how are you ever going to come up with solutions on how to fix things? It's
So,
impossible.
so
And I
let me
think
tell you,
I believe that's where we are.
there was a guy from I cannot tell you where, but it's in the United States, and this guy is a professional runner. And we're friends, and we were doing videos together, and we were talking very often. And he once told me that as a sports guy, it is your responsibility to look after your health, right? And so it was like we were talking about healthcare and so on in the United States and whatever. And one day, this guy runs a lot outside on the mountains. He got an injury. I think he broke the foot and the knee, and he was completely out. Now, luckily enough, he was doing okay, and so he had the money to do it. But that really changed his perspective on what does it mean for you to take care of your health, because there are things that are not in your control. If tomorrow I get a cancer, we might argue that I don't eat correctly or that I maybe smoke too much. I don't smoke. Probably I eat not that good. But the baseline is that, it's like, even if I do everything as good as possible, there is always the chance for me to get sick despite me trying not to. And I don't know, I think that older people kind of see that. Younger people might not, because when you're young you think that you're indestructible. I know that I did. When I was a kid, I thought, like, I can jump off a building and my bones will reconstruct themselves.
Yeah,
But anyway,
that's a common problem among young people, especially young men.
listen, Jason, I think that we're going
Hold on.
sideways.
Can I? Yeah, no, I know, but I actually, we probably are a little bit. Let me just answer one question though. Stephanie asked me if I unfriend or block people who hurl insults or post degrading comments. And I'll be honest, I don't get to that point because I generally do not respond when I see someone, for instance, posting their opinion, which I really, if it's a very, like somebody else wrote something about, as long as it's positive, I see a lot of negative stuff that I don't agree with. Generally, in those cases, I don't respond, because if I did, I would spend my entire days responding to people on Facebook and on social media. I suppose if someone just started attacking me for no reason, that I perhaps could unfriend or block them. But as I was talking about with compromise, I try not to get to that point with people. I think it's not easy. It's not an easy answer to say whether I would do it or not. But generally, I do try to be accepting to a point, and I think that can get you a long way. Just look at this guy who, this famous musician, or this black musician who started befriending the KKK guys, and he did this by talking to them. He didn't do this by saying he hated them because of their views. He did it because he actually would go and talk to them. They were shocked, right, that he would even talk to them. And eventually, many of those guys left KKK because of their experience with him. Do you know this guy I'm talking about? I can't think of his name right now. It's an amazing story. And when you think about that, and when you look at how that works, you'll never be successful if you just shut people out.
Yeah,
you have zero chance of being successful.
I agree.
So, also, yeah. Anyway, so let's get back on the topic. I'm sorry about that.
No, but you're right, and I think this is a very good point that you're making. I've had situations, which you're also aware of people that were like talking really bad and trying to sabotage also like our relationship as partners. And so, in that case, I had to go the extra mile and block those people because they are still actively trying to bring our efforts down. And I recommend anyone who has a problem with like haters that are just relentless and are trying to push you down all the time, get rid of those people. You don't need them. You don't need to hear their opinion. If they don't if they're there just to mock you and make you feel less of yourself, then you don't need that negative energy in your life. That, I give you my blessing. Don't think about it twice. You do not have to please those who come and comment on your stuff, or do it in a way that it's not constructive and they're just trying to bring you down. Because at the end of the day, who are they to pass judgment on you? Especially if you're working hard and you're putting all your energy into doing something that you feel like it's right in your heart. But anyway, with
Yeah,
that said,
I agree with you, Fabio. I agree, and I think that I would say that I feel the same way. I'm not suggesting that you should never block or unfriend someone if they are treating you in a terrible manner. It's just that I've tried throughout my life to be like that, to be open and to try to listen to people. But yes, I could of course envision a place where I can block people or unfriend them if it got to that point. I hope it doesn't, but it's possible.
Jason, there are a few questions of people asking, so what is the challenge about? Let me just share the screen
Yes.
again, and let me share some of the
Yeah.
pictures of Mike. So Mike Winkelmann Beeple is the kind of guy that with his art, he's always trying to raise awareness among people. He's very political. I'm not asking you guys to stand politically on this. However, I do want for you to use your skills as an artist to create an artwork that raises awareness and that helps people over in the United States, to make them understand that they are not alone in their struggle for justice. And so I want you to go crazy, and I want you to be as creative as possible and do something that can document the state of affair right now in the United States, so that people don't feel alone and they feel that they get the support from everybody in this beautiful community that we have built, of you guys doing these artworks every week and watching these videos, trying to improve as artists. And now you have a chance to help the conversation of what is happening over there in the United States. There was this beautiful work from Stefan Mattes. I keep looking at this. I think it's stunning. It's so beautiful.
Yeah, it is. I want to say, I just want to put as a small aside, we're talking about this, and you're saying, as when you were growing up and looking at America, like how you felt about America. I think if people here have never seen the television show, The Wire, I think it is a perfect description of like how inconsistent like America can be. It's about Baltimore. It's about the police, the drug problem, everything. It's a fantastic series, and it probably is one of the more realistic things you'll ever see about like that situation. So if you ever have a chance to check that show out, check it out, because it'll open your eyes a lot, and it's apparently very realistic, based on police who worked in there and the people of Baltimore. So. There are these kind of things you have to look out for, the realism aspect. And I agree. I think you can be as political or non-political as you want in this situation. I mean, this is not a political topic that we're talking about, in my opinion. It's more of a topic about right and wrong, and how you treat people.
Yeah.
Generally.
Yes.
Regardless of how you feel politically.
Jason, so believe it or not, we've been going for about 40 minutes. I want to thank you, man, for coming on the show with me. It's believe it or not, it I had to really think about whether or not I wanted to do this challenge. And that's because talking to other people, they told me this was going to be a bad idea. They said, like you're gonna find a lot of people that will hate on you because you have an opinion about a problem that it's, in their eyes, you're wrong and they are right. I honestly don't care. And if this has to be like this, then be it. I think that we, as a community and as a collective, we have the responsibility to give a platform to people to express their feelings and to show support to our friends and brothers over the pond. And so I invite everybody, guys, to join into this challenge. Myself, I'll promise you that in these 2 weeks, I'm gonna try and raise as much awareness as possible, trying to post your artworks. I don't know, to news outlets and to websites that can, give you the possibility
So,
to really show your work and reach a lot of people, so that maybe your message can get around.
yeah, Fabio, also I want to just to wrap up again, can you maybe repeat what you expect like this competition to be about, this challenge to be about? Like
Yes,
what I mean is because there's no assets, it's a kind of a broad topic. Maybe you can give a
yes.
more, maybe we can post these links to
I'm
these
going.
people's
Yes,
artworks.
I'm
Okay,
going to.
because I think that could be helpful to
Yes, yes.
people.
I'm going to finish a nice description in the
Okay.
video description of the project, and I'm also going to make a post on social media. So I hope that we are connected on social media so that you can see it on my Facebook or on my Instagram. The idea, it's very basic. I want you to create an artwork that shows your support towards our friends in America. It needs to be an artwork that depicts the current state of affairs in America. And I want you to be as emotional as possible, and I want you to show support to our friends over there. It's as simple as that. There is no limitation. You can decide to either go political or non political. You can choose whatever kind of asset that you want to use, whatever kind of medium that you want to use. I myself do a lot of stuff in 3D, and so probably I'm going to do something using 3D. But if you're a matte painter, if you are a collage artist, if you're a sculptor, you have my platform over the next 2 weeks to show your work and to reach a lot of people and to show your support to our friends in the United States. Uh, I know it might sound a little bit broad, but it's your chance now to express your feelings and to express your creativity and to help the conversation going in a positive direction. Jason, do you have any more questions?
I don't. Was there something you want me to ask you?
No, 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 no. I'm very happy that you kept me company and that you did this with me. I know that it was not an easy decision, and those who are not on social media, probably they're like, "What do you mean it's not an easy decision?" Uh, when you're on social media, you deal with the side of the internet that it's not a very funny side, and sometimes it can get very personal. But anyway, Jason, thanks a lot
Yes.
for being here. Thanks a lot to everybody from home for watching this. I would appreciate if you shared this challenge so that more people could join in. I really do think that we have the possibility to make a difference, or at least to raise awareness. And as artists, creators of world and creators of beauty, we have almost the obligation of doing something about this. And so, this is your chance and this is your possibility. Guys, thanks a lot for watching. J-Man, don't go anywhere. I'm going to stop the
Yeah.
stream.
All right. Bye, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
Bye. I think this went very good.